Oh, they can
Woo.
hear.
All right. Hello, beautiful people. I am your moderator, Ashley Loeb Blassingame. Beginning this year, National Online Recovery Day will be observed September 22nd during National Recovery Month. We at Lionrock created National Online Recovery Day as a platform for the recovery field and community to spotlight the amazing online resources and services available and to urge people who need help with a substance abuse problem to take the first step towards recovery. Without further ado, welcome to our third and final panel where we will be discussing getting clean and staying connected, especially amid these tumultuous times. All right, guys, let's do this. Let's do some quick intros. Gabby Bernstein, will you give us a little intro?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Gabby Bernstein. I am a spiritual self-help book author and a motivational speaker. I'm also celebrating 15 years of recovery on October 2nd. So next week is my anniversary. So this is extremely timely and very important for me to be speaking on behalf of the gifts of sobriety, particularly at this time. And if it were not for my recovery, I would not have the life, the career, the son, the marriage, everything that I have in my life. I owe it all to my recovery. So that's actually the best intro I could give. This is me, but the real me is the sober woman that I am today.
Love it. Thank you so much. Danny, you want to give us that intro?
My name's Danny Trejo, and I'm an addict and alcoholic, and I love being clean and sober. And I got clean in Soledad State Prison in 1968, and I've celebrated 52 years. I'm in love with the program I'm in love with all of them. You know, CANA, AA. I spoke at a OA convention because this is all about the disease of addiction. And I always say, if they would put us on the moon, it would only take us 2 weeks, and we would be sniffing moon dust. And we'd find a way to get high. And so it's like, I love being clean, and like, I'm an actor, and I owe everything. I owe everything in life. If it wasn't for the program, I would be dead, insane, or in jail.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you.
Jodie?
Hey, you guys, I'm Jodie Sweetin. I have been sober. March 23rd, 2011 is my sobriety date of this round, which I always say, if you have relapsed and you came back, congratulations, you made it, and you don't have to do it again. And if relapse is not a part of your story, amazing, congratulations. However you got here, however you stay here, just stay. Keep coming back. It's one of the most amazing gifts that I've had in my life. And Gabby and Danny have said before me, I really owe everything in my life to my sobriety, my happiness, most of all, regardless of what career I have, my genuine happiness and happiness with who I am comes from my sobriety. So I'm always glad to get to share that with people.
Thank you guys so much. Lovely to have you here. I'm going to start us off with a question for Gabby. Gabby, in your book, Super Attractor, you talk about how overwhelming thoughts of fear attracted chaos into your life, even causing you to get physically sick. During COVID, being in a state of fear, steady fear, has been the norm. What have you been telling people who want to be informed about what's going on while also staying out of that constant internal fear-based dialogue?
Yeah. Well, I think that there's a mantra I've had since March, which is that there's two ways that we can show up for this experience. The first way is that we can numb out, go back to our addictive patterns. Whether you identify as an addict or not, we all have addictive patterns. So go back to the eating, go back to the drinking, go back to the whatever it may be, gaming, and numb out, check out, hide out, or wake up. And this is such a beautiful opportunity to have an awakening. And actually, Danny said it earlier, he said, anyone that's getting sober at this time is so blessed. And whether it's sobriety or embarking on a spiritual path or bringing in personal development tools into your life, there's no greater time. And so there's this beautiful quote that I want to reference, which is this Amma quote, which is, that an eggshell, when it's cracked from the outside, is broken, but when it's cracked from the inside, it's reborn. So there's this birthing that can happen for all of us at this time if we choose to make the commitment to allow this obstacle that we're living through be seen as an opportunity. And the way that we can begin to do that is just first and foremost surrender to the fact that there are these two choices we can make, and choose the choice of personal growth. Choose the path of recovery if that's your choice. Choose the path of showing up for your highest potential and your highest good. And that's the first place that I would begin today, is just really making sure that we're really clear here that no matter what our circumstances may be, we have a choice. And everybody that's on any one of these panelists here, we've been in really dire circumstances, and we had that crossroads right in front of us, and we made a commitment to our personal well-being. And so that's the same place that anyone is in right now. We have the choice. And even sober people, here I was 15 years sober in the middle of COVID, and seeing all my shit come up. Sorry for cursing already, but seeing everything come up in front of me and having to show up and make the right choice. And so we have a choice today. Let's start there.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Danny, with 52 years of sobriety under your belt, is there anything that can trigger you or potentially jeopardize your sobriety? For instance, pandemic, election year, wildfires, social injustice, just to name a few. How have you been able to fight off triggering thoughts during such trying times?
During anything, it's the triggers for me. It's hard to say because I took alcohol and drugs all the way to the gas chamber, and so the trigger, it's almost funny when I can remember working out in my backyard and perspiring and working and all of a sudden that song, Tres X, La Cerveza Más Fina, comes into my head, and I think of a cold bottle of beer with dripping, but I know what that leads to. That leads to me showering with 50 men in the penitentiary and trying not to look. It's like, oh God, here I am again. So I have all the fun, went out of my drinking and using. And so when something triggers me, it's not a trigger for drugs. It's a trigger to get to work. Wait a minute, what am I doing wrong? When I get angry at somebody, it's like, oh, okay, what do I see in them that I think is in me? So it's like, I've gotten to a point to where I know what is wrong, and I think for a long time, therapy helped me. And then for a long, during this pandemic, me and Donald Logue, we started writing my book, what is it?
Autobiography?
No, and it's not animalography. My biography. That's nothing. I got a test for cancer, and they gave me a what do you call it? Yeah, but I called it the other thing when you're dead.
Autopsy?
They gave me an autopsy, and what? But it's I started doing. I did it like it's a complete inventory of my life. I've never, and I thought I did my inventories, but they were kind of, and this is after 52 years. They were okay. This, and then when we started writing this book, it's like I had some time, and I spent Donald Lowe's one of my best friends, and he's also on this program, so it was real easy to also an actor, and it was real easy to get in with him. So what I've done in this time of sobriety, it's gotten real close to some people, and sometimes when you're a speaker and you're an actor, it's like everything is kind of surface. the friends you make, or sometimes for only for 6 weeks, you're like best friends in the world, and then you never see each other again. But I've during this time, this pandemic, I've managed to get some friends that we've really become close, and I'm just triggers are just like, for me, it's like I don't think of a trigger to do something that's going to be fun. It's like a trigger is like tragic for me. It's like, and it's like a long time ago, they said when you see the bottles of booze, because they have such beautiful bottles, think of them with a skull and crossbones. I've gone into liquor stores sometimes to buy something, and I'll go, "Oh no, poison!" And everybody looks at me like I'm nuts. But they think I'm joking, but I'm serious. All that's poison.
Right.
And that's kind of what I've done.
Awesome. Thank you, Danny. Glad they didn't give you an autopsy. Jodie, in your 2009 memoir, Unsweetened, you wrote candidly about your struggles with alcohol and methamphetamine addiction. What would you say has been the single most important aspect of maintaining your sobriety and staying connected to your sober family?
Oh, wow. The single most important thing. It's, it's interesting. My life has gone, since 2009, which feels both like yesterday and also like eons ago. And 2009 wasn't even the first time I attempted to get sober. The first time I tried to get sober, I was barely 18 years old. And, everyone in my life, including myself, was like, I didn't expect to live another year the way I was going. And so since that time, it's been a lot of ups and downs. It's been having a career, losing a career, having money, losing money, having a house, losing a house, living in a friend's living room, like all of the ups and downs. And throughout all that, especially since 2011, and since my, this has been my longest sobriety, the one thing that I realize that I have to have in order to be connected is a relationship with something bigger than myself. I have to be able to rely on that thing that I choose to call God, spirit, whatever. In times like this, when maybe you can't see your sponsor or your friends or your, all of the people that you need, that you've so heavily relied upon in person, a lot of times it just comes down to like hitting my knees and being like, oh my God, okay, how can I be more of service, more of love, more of action? And those are, I don't know that there's a single most thing, but I'd say, love, service, and action are the three things that I really try and live by. And they're the things that I always, if I can keep those things in balance, whether it's, and most importantly, it's self-love. It's loving who I am, who I've become, with all of my flaws and my traumas and my wonderful things. I get to look in the mirror today and be like, I really like that person. And, some days it's better than others. And just remember the humanity, especially for anybody out there that is, new in sobriety. Just be easy on yourself. It's okay. This is not easy. This is not, this is not going to be a painless journey, but I can guarantee you that the pain that you have caused in your life by drinking and using, it will be, far greater compared to writing some things down and doing some inventory and looking at yourself. And, like Danny was saying, 52 years in, you get these triggers, and instead of them becoming a thing where you're like, oh my God, I just want to drink, you're like, oh my God, ew, I have to look at that part of myself. Why am I arguing with somebody on the internet? What is it about me that needs to be right in this moment? And I'm guilty of it. I get it. Like I'm by no means perfect. And one of the things that I love that it always says in the program is, progress, not perfection. I don't have to be perfect. I just have to keep showing up, and so those three things of love, action, and service. And I just keep coming back regardless of what state I'm in. If I'm, the pillar of sobriety that day, or if I'm a crumbling, crying mess, I know that my higher power has me. And if I just keep coming back and showing up, that the next indicated step will be there.
I love it. So relate. Gabby, you've talked about how the secret to truly manifesting your desires is to give over your timeline. I hear many sober people lamenting about the disruption of their timelines this year, leading to deep depression, fear, and some people even relapse. Can you talk a little bit about how to truly turn over your timeline when you have a strong emotional bond with it?
There's never been a time where the acceptance prayer has been more necessary. Acceptance is not what people wanted to hear in March, but it's what we're willing to hear now. I think that we are in a state now where we are recognizing this is where we're at, this is what we've got. But when our dreams are being strangled, right? When we have a vision and we want it so badly and there's obstacles in the way and we actually feel like our actions won't even matter because there's so many obstacles in the way. It can be, as you mentioned, depressing. It can be put people into a state of immobility. It can trigger the desire to use. It can trigger and activate feelings of unrecognized or unhealed trauma. In any ways that we feel blocked, we often will want to numb out. And so the work here at this time, in order to begin to undo the behavioral patterns that we want to just use to anesthetize that feeling of not being able to get what we need and what we want when we want it, is to really start to surrender to acceptance, surrender to inspiration. Now, this is major. If you can recognize that rather than focusing on an outcome, you instead, or focusing on a goal or a specific timeline, you focus on just feeling inspired instead, you will be that much faster towards that goal. Because our truest manifestations come into form when we are aligned with spirit, God, whatever we want to call it, universe, when we are in spirit, when we are inspired. So every single day, rather than thinking, I got to do this to get there, say, I need to align with inspiration to allow exactly where I'm supposed to be presented to me. And so that presence of inspiration is something that we can all access in the most mundane things. I get inspired through cooking. I get inspired through working out on a trampoline, listening to Rihanna. I get inspired I get inspired, of course, when I'm writing. I get inspired on a Zoom like this. I get inspired mostly by watching my 20-month-old child just be wild and be a toddler. There's so much inspiration available to us in these daily experiences, even in our homes when we feel stuck. Lean towards inspiration and you will be led. And inspiration, there's actually a study I read recently that people that lived with purpose had a longer lifespan than people who exercised and ate healthfully. So when we get connected with our purpose and inspiration, that's when we are actually literally rejuvenating every cell in our body. And there's no way we would want to pick up a drink, because why would we want to disturb that source of inspiration?
Right. It's cutting it off. Thank you. I have a question from the audience for everyone. The question is, how does it feel to overcome addiction, and how hard was it overcoming addiction? Anyone want to jump in on that?
Oh, I always like to say that I try not to count my victory as permanent. I try to just keep it for today, and I know that that's one of the things. But when I look back, and I'm sure we can all relate to this. I mean, anybody that has some time sober, but I look back on the things that I was doing. I actually just drove by an old apartment that I used to live at. It was my friend's apartment, and I lived in the living room. And this was, not that long ago, maybe like 11 years or so. Well, no, more than that, because my oldest wasn't born yet. But, when I look back at those times, wow. I never, ever, ever thought I'd be here. And even during the times when it in the middle of a pandemic, when you're like, oh, so I'm not working for a year and I'm not doing that, when I remember living in that constant state of fear and panic and overwhelmed and self-hatred and self-loathing and all of those things, I find the gratitude and the ability to count the small miracles that I have each day, which is just that I woke up, that I didn't get loaded, and I have continued to be of service to others. But I mean, just knowing that I can wake up today and I don't have to go hustle for drugs and go, run around and like lie to people and lie to my family and not see them and not show up for important events and all of these kinds of things that I used to do just on a regular basis. Just to know that I don't have to wake up and do that anymore. Like, fuck, man, whatever's going on in my life today, like it's not going to be that. Thank God, it's not going to be that. And you know, that little miracle each day that I wake up is a huge relief to me.
I love that. Love that. Danny, this is from Anna. How has your spirituality evolved over the years, and what does the connection look like for you day to day?
One of the highlights of my sobriety, there's a picture on the internet of Rihanna licking my chest. I'll never kind of forget that. When she mentioned Rihanna, I thought about that. And my son and all the young guys in the neighborhood were like, whoa, you're so cool. But you know what? I love this program. Do you understand? When I got here, it wasn't the first time I tried. I will go all the way back to 1959. That was my first meeting. And that's where I heard the curse of Alcoholics Anonymous. I walked into a meeting carrying a case of beer, 3 bottles of wine, half pint of whiskey, a snub-nosed 38, and I was already loaded on pills. So I was 15 years old, and I walked in, we thought it was a party. And, you know, everybody said, hi, you know, I'm Bob, and started. And I tried to get out of there, and as I was leaving, this guy said, he said, Danny, if you leave this program, you will die, go insane, or go to jail. And you know what? Every time I got in trouble from that day, 3 months later, I was on my way to the penitentiary. But I can remember specifically when the lights came on the cop cars behind us, they go, die, go insane, go to jail, die, go insane, go to jail. That's all you see from now on. And everybody that just heard me say that, you have been cursed. Now, if you go out and get in trouble, you will hear that, die, go insane, go to jail. That's the only alternative we have. So in Soledad, when I went to the hole, and I remember me and 2 other people were facing the gas chamber for what we did. So now, I made a deal with God. You say you can't, you can. I said, you know what? If you let me die with dignity, I will say your name every day, and I will do whatever I can for my fellow man. Well, I thought it was only going to be a couple of years, then they were going to kill me, but it wasn't. It was like he gave me the rest of my life. He said, prove it. And I've been holding up to my end of the bargain. Every day, and I know as long as I do something for other people, I'm going to be okay. I talked to him a couple of weeks ago and asked him, how am I doing? He said, you're good. You keep it up. You're almost out of hell. So I'm working. So I owe, and I came here owing my life. And from where I was to where I'm at, it's an impossibility. Do you understand? I've been in every country in the United States, I mean, in the world. And before I got here, I'd never left my neighborhood. And my neighborhood was Pacoima, California. The only trip I ever took was to Juvenile Hall, East Lake, to San Quentin, to Soledad, to Folsom. They're all within California. That was it. And they were all by Department of Corrections bus. So my higher power doesn't test me. He gives me a miracle. We all wait for that miracle. When I wake up in the morning, she said it. She said, I'm already in a miracle. I'm clean, I'm sober. If I'm an addict or an alcoholic and I wake up clean, I'm already in a miracle. So now how do I live that miracle? They told me, you say your morning prayers, and some of us get really, God in all his wisdom didn't make me too wise. So if I do something stupid today, it won't take him by surprise. And that works, and then I know that I'm bodily and mentally different than my fellow man. So I'll get stupid thoughts and I know how to get rid of them. This program has a way to get out of any situation you're in, any mental situation you're in. You know, it's like, I gotta write. You sit down and write. And like I said, it's like I've been writing so much, and I've been remembering stuff when I was 5, 6, 7, and I think, wow, what a cleansing, you know. And now I say his name, I say her name, it doesn't matter. It just depends on where I'm at, and it's like I feel spiritually connected all the time. You know, I can get disconnected that quick, you know, and they call it that ego, ego, edging God out, you know, that where that ego takes place. When somebody cuts me off, how dare they? That's got ego, you know. When you can get spiritual enough to when somebody cuts you off, you can say, oh my God, they must be in a hurry. Instead of calling their mothers all kind of dirty names, you're going. That was funny. I don't know where that came from, but
Hey, sorry. I just want to say something to you, Danny, really quick. And in my book, I talk about this. I was adopted when I was like 14 months old. My father, my biological father, was in Soledad and was killed in a prison riot when I was about 9 months old. And I have one letter from him. And he talks about me and his hopes for me, and that he wants to get out and get his life together. And he was in there for drugs and bad checks. And he talked about it. And I read that letter at least once a year, usually around my birthday. And I read that and I remember that there before the grace of God go I. And when I see someone with your story, Danny, I just want you to know the impact that it has on those of us that have been sober and those of us that maybe couldn't find sobriety yet before they passed, and the people that are still to come after us. And I just, I see in you the things that some people never have the opportunity to get, and in all of us. And it's such a blessing and such an amazing story that you have. But I just had to share that because, you know, when you mention it, I'm like, wow, my life could have been entirely different, you know, and his life was cut short, but there before the grace of God unfolded the things that I needed to wind up where I am today, you know. And I think when we all look back on some of our stories and some of the trauma that we have, that we hold on to, we see that some of those traumas and those things gave us the life actually that we have today. So I just, you know, I had to say that it struck me and I was like, I need to get this out of my brain. Anyway.
Awesome. Beautiful. Beautiful. The next question is for Gabby. You've talked about one of your favorite quotes being from Wayne Dyer: change the way you look at things and things you look at change. For those of us who've been struggling to look at things differently in this time, how do you suggest we change the way we look at it? Have you struggled with that shift at all this year?
Mm-hmm. Well, changing the way we look at our experiences has to be a proactive behavioral choice, and it has to be something that we commit to daily. And similar to getting sober, it's, you know, you commit to don't drink, call your sponsor, go to meetings, don't drink, call your sponsor. You want to pick up a drink, you have a bad negative thought, you want to act out, you're triggered, don't drink, call your sponsor, go to a meeting. And so you have these steps that you take. Now, when we are dealing with a negative fear-based thought that also is an addictive pattern. So fear is an addictive pattern, which just perpetuates and just comes over us and takes over at times. When we have those fearful thoughts on repeat, one of the methods that I have from my book, Super Attractor, is called the Choose Again method. And it's a beautiful method because it allows us to take a moment to look at the thought pattern that's happening over and over again and witness the thought. That's the first step. So notice the thought, notice how it makes you feel. And then the second step is to forgive yourself for having that thought. Because the moment that you forgive yourself for having the thought, you are no longer the thought. You are no longer the victim of the thought. It's just a thought that you keep thinking. And then the third step is to choose again, to proactively reach for the next best feeling thought. So that's when you could say, I'm going to call my sponsor, or I'm going to go to a meeting, or I'm going to pick up day one again today, whatever it may be. Or I'm going to choose, I'm just going to choose to see this through the lens of love, or I'm going to say a prayer. I'm going to sit in meditation. And anytime we reorganize our thoughts through this behavioral process, that's when we can start to create a new habit. And that's really what sobriety is. Sobriety is a habit. It's a pattern that we commit to and align with and return to again and again and again. And so sometimes not only do we have to get sober in our using patterns, we also have to get sober in our minds. And that mental sobriety comes when we recognize that we have a choice over the thoughts that we think. And we do have a higher power that we can rely on, that we can turn to help us lean from those fear-based belief systems and return to a loving mindset. And so that would be the other thing I would be very remiss if I did not really emphasize, as Jodie has done so beautifully, is really recognizing that when we turn over our fears to the care of a higher power of our own understanding, that is when we can let go and allow what is of the highest good to be presented to us. And one of my favorite messages is the secret to prayer is to forget what you think you need. And so just turn over what you think you need and let God show you what to do. And the three people here on this panel are living proof of what that means. We turned it over, and the next day turns it over again, and the next day turns it over again, and got out of trauma and got out of jail and got out of the most dire circumstances to be who we are today. And so hopefully we can be a power of example for people who want to get clean.
Love it. Thank you. We have a question from the audience, which I want to address because I think that it's a huge stumbling block for a lot of people. And all three of you have talked about your experience with this. The question is, how do I get over the God issue, being agnostic, and stay in the program?
I mean, I've heard so many people use so many things for whatever it is that they think is bigger than themselves. It can be the group, it can be AA, it can be the fucking ocean. I don't know. If you can stand at the waves, at the edge of the ocean and be like, I didn't make that wave come in, that's bigger than you. That's really all you need, is to just know. And I tell my sponsees this a lot. I go, imagine you have a little hula hoop around you, and it's, maybe a foot out. That's it. That you stay in your hula hoop. All you have control over is, where your arms and legs are going and how you're reacting to things. And whatever's in your hula hoop, what's outside of your hula hoop is the great beyond, the bigger world, all of it. It's all bigger than you. And that's okay. There's both, I think, the terror of being small and also the comfort in knowing that you're small and simply, a part of something bigger, which is all of humanity and 7 billion people. We're a little speck in the midst of the universe. And that, to me, I'm not a religious person. I'm definitely not somebody that goes to church and all that, but I found something bigger than myself when I go on a hike, when I go to the beach, when I look at my kids, whether they're being little, a-holes or they're being loving and wonderful. Like, I look at them and I go, I'm their mom and I brought them into this world, but I am not responsible for their journey. This is not, they are now a part of something greater than myself. Yeah. And so I think it's just that constant reminder that whatever you want to call it, you don't have to call it God. You don't have to call it spirit, just realize that you are not the end all be all controlling force in your life. The world is happening around you and you get to choose to be a part of it. And, like my mom always used to say, make good choices of how you want to be a member of that humanity, and knowing that, it's much greater than you are, and that's okay.
Absolutely. There's a sponsor that takes their sponsees to the ocean, to the waves, and says, can you stop the waves? And try to stop the waves. And when they can, say, okay, it's bigger than you. And that's what they use. Does anyone want to add to what Jodie said?
I just like being able to turn everything over to something else. I don't care what it is, but turn it over to something else. I love that part. And for me, if I'm going to pray, if I'm going to worry, why pray? And if I'm going to pray, why worry? So like I pray all day long, and I don't have too many worries. I mean, taxes, blah blah, all that. Yeah, they're coming to get me, but still, it's like I know it's all going to work out the way it's supposed to. And I went through almost losing my daughter to this disease and my son to this disease. And my oldest son's just like, doesn't even deal with it. Who cares? They don't even care about it. But literally, the only thing I had was the strength of people around me, and if it wasn't for someone on this program, Mary Matickle, in fact, I got my daughter to rehab because I was in Germany and I couldn't get a hold of my daughter, and she'd overdosed, and the only thing that saved her was that the little dog, John Wesley Harding, was biting her roommate to wake her roommate up, and saw her that she was blue, and threw her in the shower, gave her CPR, and all of a sudden, my daughter called up and asked my secretary, Mary, who's on this program, yeah, I need some money. And no, you don't. You're going to rehab. And so when I came back from Germany, she was in rehab. And it's funny, I remember I was talking, and well, both my children are clean, so due to my parenting, it was like a joke, but it was God. It was God. Man, that little dog,
God and that dog, yes.
And it's funny, about 2 weeks later, the dog pissed on the carpet, and somebody started getting me. No, he can piss anywhere he wants. Dog alone. So it's like this whole thing is like this program is for me. This program is God. This program was developed by God, and that's the way I love to see it. And as long as I'm in this program, I'm part of that God.
Absolutely. We have I want to pose a broader question. We're all parents here and all in recovery. And I'm curious, you talked a little bit, Danny, about dealing with your daughter and your daughter getting sober. And I think all of our children, I think Gabby's are the youngest, and all of our children are different. I have twins, so I always talk about kids in twos, in pairs. How do you all let go of the fear about your children doing the things that you've done? And Danny, you've experienced it, so you've had it happen, but maybe Gabby and Jodie, some of those fears that we certainly have as mothers, as parents, being, knowing this is genetic.
I think that the work that I have done to not only stay sober, but to recover from childhood trauma and to undo the traumatic effects on my brain, on my body, on my behavioral patterns, and living in the undoing through the commitment that I've made to therapeutic practices like EMDR and somatic experiencing and IFS therapy and EFT and sobriety and spirituality and I can really safely say that I am stopping the pattern. I know that I am. I have complete faith that the woman that I am today has the ability to raise a son who doesn't need to use, because his feelings and his emotions will be highly respected from birth till the end. And so because I am in the consistent pursuit of honoring his emotions and his feelings and his needs and his voice and his life to be his own, not mine, then I feel very confident that I am raising a child with the resilience that is necessary to not become an addict. Now, if my kid became an addict, that's part of his path too. And I know he has a higher power, and I know he has a lot of spiritual guidance that's supporting him as well. my hope and my prayer is that I can do my part to instill in him the behavioral patterns of resilience so that he knows how to process his emotions and not have to numb out from them, so that he knows how to speak his truth when he has something he needs to speak, so that he knows that he is acknowledged and connected to rather than ignored. So I can really, really strongly stand in my faith in his future as a result of the life that I have chosen to live as a sober woman.
I mean, I have 12 and 10-year-old girls, and let me tell you, it's not easy. It's not. And I sort of touching on what Gabby said, like I constantly remind myself, and I have other best friends as well that have daughters around the same age. And I'm like, look, they got a God and it ain't me. They've got a God and it ain't me. And so whatever that is for them, like I'm here as an example, and I look at it too. Like I know I was raised in a home where nobody drank. But I had two biological parents that were deeply, deeply addicted alcoholics and drug addicts and lived very, very hard lives. And so I know that, even by having a wonderful example, sometimes it doesn't always make the difference. Mm-hmm. But I do know that one thing that I have learned in the program is to practice these principles in all of my affairs. And that includes parenting. That includes being a mom. That includes, I am by no means perfect. I scream at my children. This pandemic, we lost our minds. I'll be honest. The first semester of school, we lost our goddamn minds. The kids were screaming. I was screaming. Everyone's crying. Work is not happening. Like it just all was like, and we lost it. But what I had to keep remembering was when I screw up, when I scream, I would immediately, my kids know, I immediately will go back and go, you know what? I was wrong. I'm sorry. That was my thing. I'm stressed and I took that out on you. Let's start this conversation over. Let's take 5 minutes and let's come back and talk. And I will say, despite all of the preteen nonsense going on with, again, 12 and 10-year-old girls, I see in my girls the ability to stop and be like, I'm sorry, Mom. And it's not every time, but I know it's there. And I know that slowly, because of the things that I've done in my program and how I have worked on immediately, making an amends and immediately trying to make a situation better when I know that I'm at fault and owning it and just being like, yeah, trying to do my best, guys. And allowing my children to see that humanity and the ability to make mistakes and make them right. I will say I've seen it in my girls, and that gives me hope because I know that I can only set as much of an example as they're willing to pay attention to. Mm. And at some point, just like my mom said, like, I just want you to hear my voice in your head. And it took a long time till, like my late 20s, but but it was there. And I know for my girls that it's there. And I just have to keep laying that foundation and keep letting them see that, Mom isn't perfect. Mom's human too. And here's my journey and here's your journey. And let's try and do this as best we can together. And some days it winds up in somebody crying and yelling. And some days we're great and we just snuggle on the couch. And that's life and that's okay. Yeah. And just reminding them that it's all ups and downs and it's okay.
I was a single parent for quite a while, and I took my son and daughters, both of them, to so many meetings that the first time they smoked weed, they felt they slipped, but they still smoked weed. Then both the daughter and son went all the way to heroin, and so that was their journey. But I just thank God that I had enough people around me to keep me sane, and to that when they reached out, they knew where to go. It wasn't, I remember my son calling me up and saying, Dad, I've had it. I don't know what to do. And I was I forget where I was, out of the country. And I was coming home on Thursday, and this was Wednesday. And so I said, I'll be home I'll see you on Thursday. So my best friend Mario, also my assistant, he knew where to go pick up so it's the people around me that knew how to deal with this also. It's like they say no, a kid is raised by a community or something. I forget what they say, but it's not just, if you're trying to do this by yourself, especially deal with drugs, you're in trouble. So my kids kind of knew and respected everyone around me, and everyone around me respected my kids. So if they reached out, they knew where to go. It's like when my daughter called my secretary for some money, and her roommate had already called her and said she overdosed. And so thank God, my secretary, no, you're not, bitch, you're going to rehab. So she was in rehab, and so thank God I wasn't there.
Mhm.
When I got back, she was in rehab. She's going on 7 years now.
Right.
And we even got a business. She's got Dirty Water Vintage. And it's the difference between vintage and old is you can make money on vintage clothes. You can't make money on old clothes. So, so she sells all this. She's doing great. Well, to have a daughter in Ohio that hasn't asked you for money in a year, she got to be doing good. So she's going on 7 years. My son's going on 6.
Great.
Love that.
I'm so proud.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. Gabby, we have a question from the audience, which I think is interesting. Is there anything that you would change about how you got into recovery, and anything that helped you specifically?
There's nothing I would change about it. By the time I actually got to a meeting and decided to get clean and sober, I was so relieved that there was another way, that I wasn't going to go back. I was just one of those people that was really excited to get clean. It might have been quite annoying in the meetings because I was 25, I was just 25 years old, just had been so strung out. I was also a cocaine addict, not just an alcoholic. And it took me down, and I was so relieved that I could feel better. So it wasn't easy to get there, but by the time I got there, it was easy to stick around. And I think that the thing that was the most valuable for me, particularly in early recovery, was the fellowship and the community, because without that, it doesn't work without that. So having a community of like-minded people all in the pursuit of something, the greatest thing ever, is such a privilege to be part of. And I always say that I just wish everybody could have a program, because the whole world deserves to have that kind of love and that kind of connection. And to be able to get on a Zoom like this with strangers, I've never met any of you before, but I feel that you're my family. And I really mean that. We all speak the same language. We've lived the same path. We have the same foundational truths. We have the same belief systems, and we've devoted our lives to them. It's just probably it can make me cry. It's one of the most beautiful things in the whole world to be able to have that kind of connection. My sponsee celebrates 7 years today. And just I remember the minute I was in a yoga studio taking a yoga class, and I knew there was a meeting up above me, and I was in the middle of the yoga class, and I thought, go up to the meeting. And I was like, no, why am I what voice is saying that to me? It was God's voice. It was the voice of spirit saying, get the hell out of in the middle of the class. I wrapped up my mat and walked up to this meeting. I could have stayed in the class. I walk up to the meeting, and there's this young woman crying on the floor. And, she says one day, and, 7 years later, she's my sponsee, and she's alive, and she's well, and she's thriving. So that's the gift of this incredible path of recovery that I think every one of us can say is just probably the most valuable element of, and why it works. And I couldn't be more grateful for the privilege of being a sober woman.
Wonderful. Yes. Agreed. We have another question here. Oh, Jodie, this is a great one. How do you feel about being adopted? I'm adopted, and I have thoughts about my birth parents, from Ivy.
Oh, hi, Ivy. It's been it was a huge thing that kept me loaded for a while. And now it's become a huge part of the story of why I stay sober.
Mm.
You know, all through my teenage years and 20s before I got sober, or even somewhat during, you know, my early stages of trying to get sober and, you know, white knuckling it for 2 years or whatever, when I was like 18, there was a deep sense of loss and pain. And what I had to really dig at and realize was, because all I knew about my parents was that, you know, I was born in jail because my mom was in jail, my dad was in prison. Like, all I knew about them was the stories of their addiction. And what I realized is my addiction, as I got older and it got worse, became this weird sense of pride and of connection to them.
Mm.
And once I had this deep-seated anger, that anger and resentment that I had, you know, no matter how much I would work on it, it was still there. And I didn't know how to not be angry, particularly at my, you know, my biological mom. And then once I had kids of my own, once I had my daughter, and you know, she was just born, and I started drinking again. All of a sudden, I was able to tap into this forgiveness and this understanding of the disease of addiction and of my own disease of addiction as something that had nothing to do with how much I loved my child. And I knew then all of a sudden that it had nothing to do with how much she loved or was attached to me. That this disease of addiction robs you of the ability to do that, to truly care about someone else before yourself and before your addiction. And so in processing all that, like, it took a long time. And I'd say that, you know, there's some wonderful books about adoption. There's one, I believe it's called The Adoption Triad, which is really wonderful, that talks about the birth parents, the adoptee, and the adoptive parents, and what that dynamic is. But really, I found for me as an adoptee, and I know there's a lot of us in recovery, you know, addiction affects a lot of adoptees, that being able to connect with that feeling and that sense of recognizing what my addiction was and what it was doing to me and how it had done that to, you know, the people that brought me into this world, I found this forgiveness and this deep sense of just being at peace with who she was, you know. And I'll tell you, Ivy, that it is possible, and it's okay to you know, to love the idea of who you think they might be, and to be able to reconcile that with who they really were, and to continue to create the person that you are aside and outside from all of that. And, you know, that forgiveness that comes, you know, from healing those resentments and doing the work in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is the one thing that really allowed me to get through what was a huge sticking point in getting sober.
Thank you. Awesome. Danny, you are a huge advocate for helping others and have a passion for talking to young people specifically. What is one thing you would like to tell the young people watching today?
Well, first of all, I'd rather shoot for the moon and miss than aim for the gutter and make it. Only problem is that like young people almost feel like they're in the gutter. You know, and it's when I go to juvenile hall, I talk to a bunch of kids that kind of feel like they've been thrown away. And you can go to middle schools and the same thing. There's kids there that are already, you can almost pick them out. You know, God, you know, you're going to be in youth authority in a couple of months, you know, and our school system, there's so much going against them, you know, there's just so much going against them. And it's like, I just try to say, you know what, it's like you can't follow the herd. You just got to say, wait a minute, I want something better in life, you know, and it's up to me. It's not up to your teachers. It's not up to your mom. It's not up to your parole officer, nothing. It's like, there's a decision that I want to do better. Either I want to do better than my mom and dad. I want to do better. And it doesn't mean that straight A's are great, but some of us are just never going to get straight A's. Wow, I got so happy I got a C, so it's okay. It's okay. You just do your best. And as long as you can go to bed saying, I did my best today and I'm going to try to do better tomorrow, you're okay. And a lot of I think one of the blessings that I've gotten is that when I go to speak with kids, I automatically got their attention just because of the position that I'm in, just because they want to know what the guy from Spy Kids and the guy from Desperado and the guy from Con Air has to say. Not so much Danny Trejo. I got the ego out. It's not me. It's that guy on the screen that they've seen. And what's my whole thing is drugs and alcohol ruin your life. Education is the key to anything you want to do. And it is, so, and like I said, it's like, when I was growing up, I was impressed by my Uncle Gilbert's flash. He always had $200 shoes on, and that was the left one. And it had, Tommy Bahama shoes, beautiful shirts. And where all my dad, all his brothers were like hard work, they had sweat rings. And I thought, wait a minute, man. It's like, I don't want to do that. I want to figure out how he does it. Well, the armed robber and a drug addict, like he had that stuff for a while and then he'd disappear, and I chose that path and it doesn't work. The flash doesn't work. Right now, I've been all over the world, and you were talking about family. I've been to Cape Town, South Africa, and went to a meeting and felt at home. I went I spoke on Zoom because I was in Turkey, in Istanbul, and I'd been there about 5 years ago, and I got to be on the Zoom meeting again, and I was there, and it was like, this is all due to this program. It's all due to taking drugs and alcohol out of my life. They made me a promise. They said, Danny, if you take drugs and alcohol out of your life will get progressively better. And that goes all the way to grammar school. My first meeting was 1959. I was 15 years old, and I was all ready for this program. And it's funny because my first sponsor said, well, no, that was all just previews of coming attractions. And that's what it was. That was the path that I was on. So I just know that once a young person commits to taking drugs and alcohol out of their lives and listening to some of the people around them, things get better.
Absolutely. Anything else, Gabby and Jodie, that you want to say to young people who are watching?
Well, I wanted to actually give a piece of advice to parents, which is to read the work of Dan Siegel, the beautiful work of the whole brain child and the work of the no drama discipline. When I spoke at a recovery clinic a while back, and they had a bunch of books that they were giving out. And this was just when I had my son, and they handed me Dan's books, and I read both of them overnight. And I said, this is the best parenting book I could ever have in my life, because these books are going to help you create resilient children and understand them from a neurological perspective, and give them the respect that many of us did not get as children. So, and as a child, I think that the best thing you could do is just really do your best to advocate for what you're feeling, to really honor and respect your feelings, and to know that your feelings matter, and that every feeling you have matters, and that you deserve to be heard, and no matter what.
I'll say too, for young people, like I said, I came into the program when I was pretty young. I was barely 18. And Danny said he went to his first meeting at 15 years old. I remember walking into the rooms, and what brought me into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous was, a God shot for me, that somebody wound up coming to a college class that it was the first class that I showed up to after like 2 weeks of detoxing at home at my parents'. And I showed up, and they were talking about the spiritual principles of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous in my Western spiritualist class. And I heard this woman, and for young people, what I will say is this: when you go into a meeting, often, unless it's a young people's AA meeting or a young people's, NA meeting, often you're not going to see people that look like you. But what you are going to hear is your stories and your feelings. And I remember the most impactful thing to me was the woman that I saw speak that night at that class, who later became my very first sponsor, Sharon. I remember hearing the way I felt come out of the mouth of someone that looked nothing like me. And when I just closed my eyes and listened to her pain and the despair that led her where she was, and the hope and the joy that she has now, that she had at that moment, like, I heard that in a different way when I just closed my eyes and listened to the story. So it's really easy to go into meetings when you're young and angry and like, fuck this, I don't want to be here. And see all the things that make you like, I'm not like you. I don't sit at home and drink wine. I'm not like driving a nice car. I'm not this. But when you sit there and you're drunk alone at night, you feel the same way that I do when I'm locked in my room sneaking bottles of wine from my parents' kitchen. And when I'm cutting myself in the dark because I'm just in so much pain, I can hear those stories, and I need to get over the fact that the person delivering them doesn't look like me. Mm-hmm. And that's the real connection and beauty of this program, is that we, like Gabby was saying, we're family. You hear and feel things on a deeper level from people in this program, and the stories that you can relate to of people. It says in the book, we were people that otherwise would not mix. Most of the people that I go to a meeting with, I'm like, I wouldn't hang out with you in real life, but I sit here in the rooms with you and I'm like, I want you to succeed and find love and be happy and be truly joyful in who you are. And, if you're young and you're new, if you're young and you've been there a while and you're just like, these old people don't know shit. Someday, if you just keep showing up one day at a time, you too will be one of those old people that doesn't know shit. And I can guarantee you that the promises will come true if you just stick around long enough.
It's true. It's so true. Went to my first meeting at 15. So stick around, stay at the barbershop. You're going to get a haircut. So it's wonderful. And I want to thank you guys so much for being here. Gabby, Danny, and Jodie. It is truly my honor and been a pleasure to spend this time with you. And I want to thank everyone who has joined us live today for submitting amazing questions for our panelists, for each and every single one of you. For more information on National Online Recovery Day, including how to get involved, personal stories of recovery, and online recovery resources, you can visit nationalonlinerecoveryday.com. To join the conversation online, we encourage the recovery community and professionals in the field to share their online recovery experiences, whether with treatment, support groups, or other online resources, using hashtag National Online Recovery Day. And thank you so much to everyone who tuned in, and thank you, panelists, for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.